She was 16 years old, sitting in her bedroom, furious about the way kids at her school were divided into two tribes, the rich kids and everyone else. So she did something about it. She wrote a book, not a school assignment, not for a grade, just raw teenage anger poured onto paper. That book became The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, and it didn't just become a bestseller. It basically invented the entire genre of young adult fiction as we know it today. Before this book, publishers didn't think teenagers wanted to read about real teenagers, gang violence, poverty, death identity. Hinton proved them catastrophically wrong. Decades later, kids are still assigned this book in school, still crying over the same two characters, still repeating one line to each other, "Stay gold." Today we're breaking down the entire novel, every chapter, every major idea, so stick around, because by the end you'll understand exactly why the slim little book about street gangs became one of the most important novels ever written for young people. Before we get into the plot, you need to understand the battlefield. The story is set in 1960s Tulsa, Oklahoma, and society there is split into two rival groups. On one side, the greasers, poor, tough kids from the wrong side of town, named for their slick-back hair. On the other, the Socs, short for socials, wealthy, privileged kids who drive nice cars and seem to have everything. The Socs beat up greasers for fun. The greasers steal and fight back out of pride and survival. This isn't just a rivalry. It's class warfare dressed up as teenage gang violence, and every character in this book is shaped by which side of that line they were born on. Our narrator is Ponyboy Curtis, 14 years old, walking home alone from the movies, which is basically a crime in his world, because lone greasers are easy targets. Sure enough, a carload of Socs jumps him, and he'd have been seriously hurt if his older brothers and friends hadn't shown up to scare them off. We quickly meet Ponyboy's world. His parents died in a car accident, so he lives with his two older brothers. Darry, 20, is the oldest, hardened, strict, and forced to give up his own dreams of college and football to work himself to the bone, keeping the family together and out of the state's hands. Sodapop, 16, is the charming, easygoing middle brother who dropped out of school to work at a gas station. Then there's the rest of the gang. Two-Bit Matthews, a wisecracking shoplifter. Steve Randall, Soda's best friend. Dally Winston, a hardened criminal who's been arrested and even jailed, someone who genuinely doesn't care about anything anymore. And Johnny Cade, the youngest and most fragile of the group, a 16-year-old who was beaten nearly to death by Socs once before and has never recovered from the fear. Ponyboy sets up the tension in his own household early. He and Darry constantly clash, with Darry's harshness feeling less like love and more like punishment to Ponyboy. Darry never lets Ponyboy forget the rules. Be home on time, keep his grades up, stay out of trouble. To Ponyboy, it feels like Darry sees him as a burden rather than a little brother. He idolizes Sodapop instead, who never yells, never lectures, just makes him feel understood. That fracture matters, because it's about to push the whole story into motion. We also get a clearer picture of what daily life looks like for a greaser. These aren't cartoonish thugs. They're broke kids trying to survive in a system stacked against them, patching together odd jobs, hand-me-down clothes, and each other's company, because nobody else is looking out for them. Two-Bit's constant jokes, Steve's loyalty to Soda, even Dally's coldness, they're all coping mechanisms for growing up with nothing and no one watching your back except the guy standing next to you. At a drive-in movie, Ponyboy and Johnny meet two SOC girls, Cherry Valance and Marcia. Cherry turns out to be sharp and surprisingly honest. She tells Ponyboy that Socs have problems too, that money doesn't fix everything, that things are rough all over. It's the first real crack in the us versus them wall Ponyboy has built in his head. Cherry also admits she could fall in love with Dally, but never will, because he's too dangerous. Things sour fast when the girls' SOC boyfriends, including a hot-headed one named Bob, show up. There's a confrontation, but no violence yet. Cherry and Marcia leave with the Socs to avoid a fight. It's a quiet chapter, but it plants a huge idea. Maybe greasers and socks aren't actually that different underneath. Ponyboy also opens up to Cherry in a way he doesn't with people from his own side of town, admitting how much he loves sunsets, how he watches them from his back porch. It's a small detail, but it's one of the most important in the whole book because Cherry tells him she watches the same sunset from her house across town. Different worlds, same sky. That single shared image becomes a quiet symbol for everything the book is trying to say about connection cutting across class lines. This is the chapter that changes everything. Walking home late, Ponyboy and Johnny are jumped by a group of Socs, including Bob at a park. The Socs try to drown Ponyboy in a fountain. Johnny, terrified and desperate, pulls out a switchblade and stabs Bob to save his friend's life. Bob dies. Johnny and Ponyboy are now killers on the run, and the book takes a hard turn from teenage rivalry into genuine tragedy. They find Dally, the one person hardened enough to know what to do. He gives them money, a gun, and a hideout, an abandoned church out in the country. Ponyboy and Johnny cut and dye their hair, disguise themselves, and go into hiding, completely isolated from everyone they love. For the first time in the book, Ponyboy is forced to confront what he's actually done, not in the abstract, but as a real killing that can never be undone, and the guilt and fear sit on him like a physical weight through every page of hiding. Alone in the church for days, something unexpected happens. Ponyboy and Johnny bond deeply. Ponyboy reads Johnny the novel Gone with the Wind, and they talk about Robert Frost's poem, Nothing Gold Can Stay. The poem that gives the book its most famous line. Johnny tells Ponyboy to stay the way he is, innocent and idealistic. Stay gold, Ponyboy. Stay gold. This moment matters so much because Johnny, who has been beaten down by his home life and by the Socs, still sees something in Ponyboy worth protecting, a kind of hope that Johnny himself never really got to have. During this stretch, the boys also debate what makes someone a hero, and whether Dally, hardened and criminal as he is, actually has more decency underneath than anyone gives him credit for. Ponyboy starts to realize that people like Dally aren't born mean. They're made that way by years of being failed by everyone around them, which slowly reframes how Ponyboy sees his whole world, Socs and greasers alike. Dally eventually visits and reveals something devastating. Johnny's badly abusive home life has left his parents, not even caring that he's missing. Dally also tells them the two gangs are planning a massive rumble to settle the score, and that Ponyboy's brothers are worried sick. Johnny decides they should turn themselves in. But on the way back, they discover the church is on fire, and children are trapped inside. Without hesitation, Johnny and Ponyboy run into the burning building to save them. They get the kids out, but a burning roof beam collapses on Johnny, breaking his back. All three, Ponyboy, Johnny, and Dally, who dove in after them, end up hospitalized, but they're hailed as heroes in the news instead of criminals. It's a bitter kind of irony. The same boys the town saw as violent troublemakers just days earlier are suddenly local heroes, praised by the same newspapers and police who would have locked them up without a second thought. Ponyboy returns home to Darry and Sodapop, and for the first time, sees Darry break down crying. Proof that his brother's harshness was never about not caring, it was fear of losing him. Ponyboy also gets a visit from Randy, one of the Socs, who admits he's sick of the fighting and doesn't even want to be there for the planned rumble anymore. It's another moment where the line between us and them gets blurry. Randy is just as trapped by expectations as any greaser. Meanwhile, Johnny's condition is dire. He's paralyzed from the waist down and dying in the hospital. The chapter is heavy with grief before the loss even happens, as the gang tries to process what's coming. Dally, in particular, starts to unravel, visiting Johnny constantly, growing more volatile with everyone else, as if he already knows what's coming and can't stand it. Meanwhile, the news that Bob's death may go to trial hangs over Ponyboy and Johnny, adding legal dread on top of everything else they're carrying. Against medical advice, Ponyboy sneaks out to fight in the huge rumble between the greasers and the Socs. The greasers win, but it's a hollow, ugly victory. Nobody feels triumphant, just exhausted and bruised. Ponyboy and Dally rush straight from the fight to the hospital to tell Johnny the good news. Instead, they arrive just in time to watch Johnny die. His last words to Ponyboy are heartbreaking. He tells him that saving those kids from the fire was worth it, and repeats Johnny's now iconic line, "Stay gold." Johnny's death breaks Dally completely, the one person in the story who acted like nothing could touch him. Dally always said Johnny was the only person he genuinely loved. In a spiral of grief, Dally robs a store and, when the police corner him, pulls out an unloaded gun, forcing them to shoot him. He dies in front of Ponyboy, having essentially chosen death rather than live in a world without Johnny. In 1 week, Ponyboy has lost 2 people who felt like brothers. It's the darkest turn in the book. A boy who survived a house fire and a citywide gang war is undone not by violence itself, but by grief he has no idea how to carry. Ponyboy spirals into shock, struggling to accept what's happened, even briefly telling people it was Bob, not Johnny, who killed Bob, in a stabbing state of denial. He gets sick, and there's a court hearing about custody, where Ponyboy is nearly separated from his brothers before the judge ultimately lets the family stay together. Randy visits again, and the 2 boys have a real, honest conversation about the pointlessness of the violence between their groups, that in the end, everyone loses. Ponyboy's grades slip, his friendships strain, and he almost fails school entirely, weighed down by grief and numbness. Even 2-Bit and Steve notice he's not himself anymore, quieter, distant, like part of him checked out the night Johnny died. Darry and Sodapop try to hold what's left of the family together, but the strain of losing Johnny and Dally hangs over the Curtis house like a permanent shadow. Then his English teacher gives him one last chance. Write a semester theme, anything he wants, to pass the class. Ponyboy sits down to write, and realizes he wants to tell Johnny's story, so that other kids won't think being a greaser means nothing. He begins writing the very book we've just read, and the final page loops back to the exact same opening line the novel started with. The story closes with Ponyboy no longer just a kid caught in a gang war, but someone determined to turn tragedy into meaning through the one thing he has, his own voice. So what is this book actually about underneath the plot? A few things stand out. First, class division is a trap for everyone inside it, not just the poor. Socs like Cherry and Randy have money and status, but they're just as lost and unhappy as the greasers, proof that the labels us and them hide more similarity than difference. Second, violence solves nothing. The rumble is framed as a victory, but it changes nothing and costs everything. Johnny and Dally are both dead by the end, while Bob's death haunts everyone involved. Hinton never lets violence look glamorous. It's ugly and consequential every time. Third, and maybe most importantly, innocence is fragile and worth protecting. Nothing gold can stay is the emotional core of the whole book. Johnny's dying wish isn't for revenge or anger. It's for Ponyboy to hold onto his goodness in a world that keeps trying to harden him. That's the real theme, staying gold. Staying compassionate, thoughtful, and human, even when your circumstances push you toward becoming numb. And finally, family isn't always blood, and love doesn't always look gentle. Darry's toughness was fear disguised as anger. The gang functions as a found family for boys who, in Johnny's case, have none at home. Hinton suggests that chosen bonds between people who show up for each other again and again can be just as real and just as vital as any biological family. That's The Outsiders, a book written by a teenager about teenagers that ended up teaching generations of readers that empathy matters more than which side of the tracks you're born on. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more book summaries just like this one, and drop a comment telling me which character hit you the hardest, Johnny, Dally, or Ponyboy. See you in the next one.